And clear global variables means that if you reload your dial plan, should it wipe out any global variables that are, or should it still leave them set? The defaults are yes, no, and no, and I tend to leave them that way. Okay, I have them in there just as an example. Okay, so there's our dial plan. We'll go back into the asterisk command line interface. We'll do a dial plan reload, and it'll go through and sort that. And now we can do like dial plan show users and see exactly what's in that user's context in the dial plan. Verify that asterisk really saw what it was supposed to, in our dial plan. Okay. If we had a typo in there, maybe we'd only see like 6001 and 6003, and we could say, why didn't it get 6002? I must have a typo. Okay. So that's again just a good sanity check to get in the habit of doing is doing dial plan show users. Another thing that you can do is you can say dial plan show an extension number. So you can say if I dialed extension 6001 in the user's context, what would execute? And it says, oh, I would go out and dial the first analog channel and make that work and dial that phone. Okay? So,
could you have a 6001 in a different context also?
Absolutely. You want to see an example of that?
Why would you have that?
For several different reasons. Imagine that you were doing, say, a kind of a hosted PBX solution, and maybe you have 3 or 4 companies that are kind of multi-tenanted on one Astra system. You could have extension 6001 for Joe's Bakery, and you could have extension 6001 for Frank's Auto Body Shop, even though they're sharing the same PBX. It's just a way of dividing the dial plan into different things. There's lots of different reasons why you may or may not do it, but that's just one easy example to show. Okay? Question over here. No, because they're different extensions. So typically what we would do is, here, let me just give a quick example here. So typically where you would use multiple priorities is you say, hey, I want to do 6001, and first try to ring that phone. Oops, I should pay attention to my own screen here. And then maybe as a second step, if that phone doesn't answer within 10 seconds, then maybe I want to go do something else. Play back a sound file or something like that. Did you install the sounds on here, Derek? We'll see. We'll play back a sound file that says weasels have eaten our phone system if they don't answer the call within 10 seconds. That make sense? So you just add multiple steps for that same extension number. And a lot of times what I like to do is actually put a blank line between my extensions just to make it easier to see where does one extension stop and the next one start. Okay? So after we've made those changes, the dial plan reload. You ready for a demo? Let's try it. So I'm going to pick up an analog phone here. Get dial tone. Dial 6003. And my SIP phone starts running. That easy, right? That wasn't too hard. A couple of lines in a config file, a couple of lines in the dial plan. We've got phones ringing each other. All right, so now you want the demo of the weasels have eaten our phone system, right? So I'll pick up this other phone so that I can call that phone. I'll get dial tone here. I'll dial 6001. Now it shows you what's happening up there. You see that? It's ringing. It's ringing. I should have set it shorter than 10 seconds, but that's all right. Dramatic pause. Oh, we didn't have the sound file. It couldn't find the sound file. Good demo. We'll fix that. It would have, if it would have found that file, it would have played the weasels have eaten our phone system and then hung up. Oh, did it? Was I too? All right. Try it again. Get the volume up here. There we go. Yay! I love demos. But that shows you just how easy it is to go in and script the Astra style plan. Really not too hard. What if I wanted 6004 that also rang that phone? It's not hard to do, right? In fact, let's do a couple more demos while we're at it, just for the fun of it. Let's try something crazy. What if we want to ring 2 phones at the same time? What's that? Yeah, we charge extra for that. It costs us an extra ampersand right there. Aw. It's that easy. Should we test it? Dial plan reload. Now both phones are ringing. And it shows you that both Dottie channel 1 and Dottie channel 2 are ringing. It's that easy.
Are all these messages being logged in a file?
They are. Yep. If by default, if you go to the var log asterisk directory, there's a file there called messages, and it's going to give us all the warnings and errors, anything that's kind of a problem. You can also go into the asterisk configuration file called logger.conf. Oh, what directory I'm in? If you open up logger.conf, you can come down here and you can control what goes into that messages file. And so you could say, hey, I want everything that's console messages, or here's a better example down below here. See this full? If we were to uncomment that means notices, warnings, errors, debug messages, verbose messages, DTMF messages, fax messages, everything would go to a file called full in that var log asterisk directory. So you have complete control over what gets logged and what doesn't get logged.
When you start asterisk, does it wipe out the previous file, or does it just?
It depends. Yep.
So you have to manually.
You have to manually rotate the logs and those sorts of things. Or you can go to the asterisk CLI and say logger rotate, if I can type, and that'll rotate the logs. Or you could do it with a cron job, or you could use what's the log rotate, the Unix utility log rotate to automatically rotate them for you. And yep, easy peasy. All right, so let's get back to the slides here for a second, then we'll come back and do some more demonstrations here in a minute. Where were we? Okay. So we've got the basic PBX working. We've got phones that can call each other. Now I want to take a step back and talk about some kind of debugging techniques, some things that will come in handy as you're trying to get your system set up for the very first time. Okay? The very first thing I can tell you is don't start by trying to look at your configuration files. Your brain made an error when you typed in the configuration file. Your brain's going to make that same error when you go to read the configuration file. Okay? Instead, I suggest that you use the asterisk command line interface to help you figure out where in the config file the problem exists, and then go look at it with a little narrower focus, and then you'll usually see the problem. Okay? So here's what I always suggest you do. First of all, look at the context. Remember that any incoming call into asterisk is going to come through a channel driver. That channel driver is going to send that call to a particular context. Make sure you're looking in the proper context. Okay? Let me give you a couple of examples of looking for if I can get the right screen up here. Let me give you an example here of within asterisk how you would check and see which context those calls are coming into. On the SIP side of things, you could type SIP show users, and you notice there's a column over there that says default context. That's going to say, hey, calls coming into this, from this particular device, in this SIP phone in this example, they're going to come into the user's context. That make sense? On the analog side, we could say Dottie show channels, and there's a context column there as well to show you which. So you see, in this case, we've got both the SIP phone and the 2 analog phones all pointed at that user's context. That make sense? So the first thing I look at is the context. Okay, so the other thing is whatever extension you dial on a phone, that extension has to be in that context for it to go out. So let's look at an example here. let's assume you were dialing extension 1234, and for some reason that failed. You're just getting a fast, busy signal. Okay? So the first thing I would do is type SIP show users, assuming it was a SIP phone, to figure out what context is that, that call coming into. And then I would use the dial plan show command and say dial plan show 1234 at users. Say, what would happen if I dialed 1234 in the user's context? What would happen? So let's try that out here. Okay, see that okay? So I'm going to say dial plan show 1234 at users. Now what do you expect is going to happen? I don't have one, so it's going to say, I'm sorry, it failed. There wasn't that extension didn't exist. And I love the wording here. There is no existence of. Great grammar. I love it. So that's one way of telling you, hey, you can't dial extension 1234. It doesn't exist. And if you see when you do try to dial it, it's going to say the call was rejected because the extension was not found in context users. I mean, the command line there is going to be try to be useful and help you out and say that's why I rejected the call. Couldn't find that particular extension. Okay. So that's the first thing I check. The next thing that I check is check for dial plan errors. Whenever you do a dial plan reload, as Asterisk is loading up the dial plan, it'll do some basic error checking on that file. The problem is if you have your verbosity set to 3 or higher, like I did in this example, you see it just a bunch of things scrolled past on the screen and you couldn't see what was going on. If you set your verbosity back to 2 temporarily, before you do your dial plan reload, Asterisk will highlight any errors or warnings or notices it finds in your file as you're doing your dial plan reload. So let's see if we can see an example of that. So here, if I just do a dial plan reload, you see things scrolled off the screen so fast you couldn't see what there was. So if I say core set verbose 2 and do a dial plan reload, then it's just going to say, I parsed this file, and oh, I didn't find any warnings or errors. I didn't find any problems there. Okay. Once you're done with your dial plan reload, then you can do core set verbose 3, so that now we'll see every step in the dial plan as the calls come through. It does not. Okay. Now, the next thing to understand is that when you dial an extension in the dial plan, Asterisk goes to that particular context in the dial plan, finds that extension, then executes the things it finds there. If it finds a problem at that point, it'll again tell you on the command line interface what the problem was. One of the key words you'll find when you're doing things on the Asterisk command line interface is you'll see the word auto hang up or auto fall through. Auto fall through means that Asterisk ran out of steps. It did step 1, it did step 2, couldn't find a step 3. That's called auto fall through. It fell through the end of the priority numbers, so it's going to hang up the call. So keep an eye out for that little phrase, auto fall through. That means that it's run out of steps to do. Okay?
So in your, I think it's in set.com, somewhere there's something where you can set auto fall through equals no, and just hang if you don't have any more steps.
Correct, and I recommend you don't change that setting, but that's for historical reasons. It used to be different. It used to be if Asterisk ran out of steps to do, it would sit there and just play silence and wait for you to type in another extension on the phone, which is a little bit of a security risk and probably not the smartest thing in the world to do. So we changed that, it's probably been 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even longer than that, to when you run out of priorities, go ahead and hang up the call, which is a much safer thing to do. But you can't go turn that off if for historical reasons you want to emulate that old nasty behavior, but you can do it. Okay? The next thing that I want to point out is that sometimes just looking at the dial plan and looking at the messages on the command line interface aren't enough. Sometimes you want to do a little deep dive into the protocol. Somebody asked me earlier, I can't remember where it was, back here somewhere. They were sitting back here somewhere, and they were talking about the SIP protocol. And how do I get the SIP messages to show up on my console? What if I wanted to take a little deeper dive into the SIP protocol? Well, one easy way to do that is use the SIP set debug on command. And then when you do that, you'll actually see the SIP messages right there on the asterisk CLI, and they'll go